This is a video on how to add and subtract fractions. We're going to practice mostly with adding. Subtracting is the same. These are fractions that are less than 1. I'll do a lesson on improper fractions or mixed numbers later on. So I'm starting with fractions where they call it like denominators. So the denominator is D for down, denominator is the bottom number, which I'm sure you all know. So this one has the same denominator. They both have 4 on the bottom. So if that's the case, then you can just add the top numbers because they're both fourths. It'd be like if I took a piece of paper, pretend that this is square, and I folded it so that I had 1/4, coloring in that 1/4, and I added 3 more fourths, 1, 2, 3, I'd have 4/4. 3 plus 1 is 4. Bottom number stays the same. And adding and subtracting, as the top number is the same, if the bottom number is the same, you just add the top numbers. This wouldn't change to 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4 plus 4 is 8, because they would have to divide it in smaller pieces. This says 1/4 plus 3 more fourths equals 4/4 altogether, which is really equal to 1. On fractions, you always do simplest form with your answers. So the answer here is 1, because 4/4 equals 1. Get rid of all of this. And write a new fraction. And continue with like denominators first. And it doesn't matter that they're not in simplest form to start with. It doesn't matter till our answer. That's our last step, is to check if it's simplest form. So since the denominators are both 6, they already have a like denominator. I just get to put my 6 down here, because my pieces are still going to be in sixth. And I add my top numbers. 4 plus 3 is 7, which is an improper fraction. It's squishing itself, so we're going to have to change that. So we're going to do simplest form. So all we did so far, our steps are write the denominator. If it's the same, just write it. Add the top numbers. We got our answer. Now we have to make it in simplest form. Well, 7/6, 6/6 would be 1 whole, and I'd have 1 left over. So my simplest form answer would be 1 1/6, because 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 more is 7. I'd have 1 whole set of 6 I could take out. 6/6, then I'd have 1/6 left. 1 1/6. That's just a couple reminders of adding with like denominators. It gets a little harder when you have unlike denominators, so we're going to practice a couple. I like to teach my students to do a T-chart. I call this a T-chart. Most people do. It's like a T, long T tipped sideways, so it's called a T-chart. The minute you see that the denominators are not the same, you need a T-chart, because really what you're doing is getting the same denominator first, making equivalent fraction to get the same denominator first, and then you can just add. So if I started with 1/2 plus 3/4, I can't just add it because I don't know if I have halves or fourths. So I'm going to put my bottom numbers, but I'm trying to decide. This one's easy for me to see in my head, but we're going to work it out just kind of so you can see it. I put my denominators, my bottom numbers in my T-chart, and I count by those numbers. 2, 4, 6, and then I would count by 4s. I don't have to because I already see it, but if I was going to, I'd do 4, 8, 12, and I see when I have something that matches in the top row and the bottom row, I circle it. That's the number we're going to use for the denominator. So we're going to use force. We're going to use 4. This one's already a 4, so I don't have to do anything to it. It's already force. This one's not a 4, so I'm going to write a 4 here because that's what I'm going to use. And I have to figure out, how do I make an equivalent fraction to 1/2 is how many 4s. I always go times what? 2 times what gave me 4? It would be 2. And I say play fair. If you get the bottom one a 2, you got to give the top one a 2. So 1 times 2 equals 2. So 1/2 and 2/4 are the same thing. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to add 2/4 and 3/4. I can now because I have 4 on the bottom. First step is the bottom number stays the same. Denominator stays the same once you get it so that it's the same on both ones. Then you add your top numbers. 3 plus 2 is 5. And we got an improper fraction again. You don't always, but I have been in these examples. How many sets of 4/4 can I take out? Well, 1. So we're putting it in simplest form. 1. And then I would have 1 more 4th left. So my simplest form answer is 1 1/4. 5/4 is the same as 1 1/4. So the steps to adding a fraction with unlike denominators is to use a t-chart to make an equivalent fraction with the same denominator. Then you multiply to get the equivalent fraction. And then you go back to the other steps. Copy the denominator, add the top numbers, put it in simplest form. Let's try another one. Let's do 2/3 plus, and I like to write them up and down, 1/12. You can probably already guess that we're going to use 12s because 3 goes into 12. But if it was harder, we wouldn't know that. So we'd put our denominators in the t-chart when we see they're different. If the top number, one of the numbers goes into the other denominator, usually use it. But if we didn't know that, we'd go count by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12. I usually like to do about 3 or 4 of them and see if I have it. Yep, I already have it. I'm not going to go 12/24 because I'd make it harder for me. When I have something in both charts, I circle it, and that's the number I use on the bottom. I already have a 12, leave it alone. This one doesn't have a 12, so whatever I write up here, I write as the new denominator. And then I got to make 2/3 into the same number of 12s. So I multiply. 3 times what is 12? Well, 4. And if I change this one, I have to change the numerator, the top number. I have to multiply by the same thing. That's really important. Otherwise, it doesn't stay the same fraction, equal the same fraction. 4 times 2 is 8. So 8/12 is equal or equivalent to 2/3. I'm done with all of this part. I'm just using my new equivalent fraction to add to this. Now I can add 8 plus 1 is 9. I keep the denominator the same. Yay, it's not squishing itself this time, not improper. But it isn't simplest form. Simplest form, if it's squishing itself and improper, we have to make it a mixed number. But if it's a regular fraction, we just take out, if there's something that can be divided into both of them, we do that. Are there any numbers that go into 9 and 12? Yes, 3 does. It's the biggest one because 6 would go into 12, but 6 wouldn't go into 9. So nothing bigger. 9 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3. 9 divided by 3 equals 3. Weird 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So my answer is 3/4. Nothing else goes into 3 and 4. If I got a number like, if I divided and got a number like 6/12, which has nothing to do with this problem, it's just an example, and I divided by 2 smaller one, let's say I started by 2. We always divide by the same thing on the top and the bottom. I would get 3, 6, which I wouldn't be done because still can take 3 out of that. So it's not simplest form yet. I ran out of room. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So simplest form is 1/2. We'll do another video on simplest form. Sometimes you have to change both numbers.